doing this project called Apparat since quite a long time. I released my first record 10 years ago, which was quite an electronic one, and since then it's been a journey since I've always changing a little bit, new influences and new ideas, and my music slowly became more acoustic during the years. I ended up making some kind of a band record, which is the one we are talking about right now, I guess. I call The Devil's Walk a band record, even though I mostly produced it on a computer, but there were always people around. When I started working on it in Mexico, I was with 3 other people, and we did lots of band-like recordings there. And suddenly I ended up on a chair looking at the beach with headphones, and I was working on the music, and it became more electronic again, just because I was tweaking all the sounds and used lots of effects and stuff. And when I came home after this Mexico session, I just realized it was already more electronic than I wanted it to be, because I was tweaking it too much probably. So I had to rewind the whole thing a little bit, and I got back to the core of the songs. Hooked up with another guy in Berlin, Nackt is his name, now a good friend of mine and part of my band as well. And then we were the band basically, because he plays every instrument. He helped me arranging everything. So basically this whole record was about collaborating with people.
Trees and houses stray, losing voices for the day. For the better and the bright, for a way out of the night. I just want to slide across. I am trying to get lost.
There's a couple of reasons for the name of the record. One reason is that recently I just got interested in the whole romanticism period, just because I can relate to the idea of emotions being a source of inspiration. Obviously lots of romantic art also has this melancholic vibe to it, which I can relate to. Did a little bit of research, and at some point I came across this poem or ballad Shelley wrote, and it's called The Devil's Walk. It is actually about the devil on his way to the government to meet with his friends. Like the authorities are supported by the devil 200 years ago, and he wrote it as a reaction to some kind of an economic crisis at this time, a food crisis, and it still makes sense 200 years later. It was just interesting. It's not really like this is some kind of political album, you know. It is basically a very like lyrical from the lyrics. It's just personal stuff I experienced, little stories. I felt the urge to put a little bit more meaning in the whole cover artwork and the title, because that also works well together. There's also some salesman on the cover that's kind of a puppet of a devil, which actually was painted by a Mexican artist called Posada in the early 20th century. Everything just made sense together. I like that idea. always had some kind of a passion for Mexico since I went there for the first time, which is maybe 8 years ago. I got invited to play a festival. Like music-wise, it is interesting, but I also got interested in the country. It's really, it's just beautiful. It's nice. You have the West and the East Coast, which are completely different, and mountains in the middle. So it's there's a lot to see. You know, in the beginning, I had this idea to completely go to the countryside without any other people, complete solitude. And it didn't work because you obviously need some kind of infrastructure, and I needed someone hooking me up with the technical stuff. And so we chose something in between, some place which is also close to an airport because I had to play some gigs. And we went to Sayulita, which was a good compromise. I wanted to record a record in a non-studio environment, and I wanted to experiment a little more. Basically, the band didn't really exist before the album, obviously, so we had to figure out how we're gonna play everything live. And Nakt, the guy who was co-producing, he also helped me to get the band together and to transform the recorded songs into band versions, which isn't that easy as well, especially for someone who has such an electronic background. I think the biggest difference between computer music and real instruments is the access to the actual sound. With a guitar or a piano, you have instant access. It gets you always faster to the result. And that's the main reason I started singing, basically, because singing is a very direct connection from your brain to the voice. You just have to think something and suddenly you might have a song. And I really wanted to capture this in the earliest stage and in a very pure form. I keep it as emotional as possible.
Shapes still melt into the snow. Looking down at scattered bones. I used to keep a slender heart.
The main mood of my music has always been melancholic. This is my form of expressing myself, and I'd rather write a song about something than talk to people about it, basically. Maybe that's just because whenever I'm in a happy mood, I'm expressing it in a different way. Then I feel like going out to a pub with someone and I get drunk. But whenever I'm sad, I go to the studio and make a song. I've been making electronic music for almost my whole life. I turned into a DJ when I was 14. I ordered records. I was really embracing the whole technological, the big step at some point when computers were actually capable of being a whole studio. I was programming a lot, and I was a real nerd, basically. And at this point, it was still an adventure because a lot of sounds were new. And then obviously at some point companies started producing all these plugins and software synthesizers and whatever, and it seemed like there's nothing really exciting anymore because everything's been done, and it was way too easy to make a certain sound because you knew, okay, there's this plugin, I just open it, done. So that took the fun away a little bit, because a big part of making electronic music for me was the nerdy part of sitting somewhere in a dark room at night programming a sound or something. And once that got too easy, I think I started being interested in guitars and pianos. Just the opposite thing. second album, which is a long time ago, I already tried to have a little bit of a human touch in there. Just back in the days, funny enough, I did it during programming, so I was basically programming mistakes on purpose, which in the end isn't really a human thing. It's the machine making a mistake, but basically mistakes are quite human, so maybe that made the music a little more interesting as well. And these days, you know, also for the new record, we ended up using takes that weren't perfect and just noises we captured somewhere by mistake during the recordings and all this kind of stuff. And probably that makes it more warm and more accessible compared to club tracks, like purely digital, functional music. I've done some more or less surprising moves in the past. For example, when I made my second album, there was singing on the album and some guitars and whatever, and I already thought that this is too much for my fans, like the 5 people I had at this point. I was already kind of unsure about this thing and if it's the right move. And then next album was Waltz in 2007, and the same thing happened to me. I was like, oh my god, so many instruments and so much singing, and electronic people, they can't handle it. And it always worked, you know, because people are not as narrow-minded as you might think. And this time it is quite a big step because the album is barely electronic. A different sound, but people already told me that a song, for example, a song like Ash sounds like an Apparat song done with acoustic instruments. And I think that's the nicest thing to hear, because it doesn't sound like I'm making completely new music right now. I'm just making my music with different tools. In a way, the music is not really about how it's done and if it sounds electronic or not. It's about the song and it's about the emotions, and this is still pretty much the same, I guess. The album is going to be out in the end of September, and we're going to start touring right after. In the beginning of October, we'll do France and then the UK, all on a tour bus, which is quite exciting for me because I've always been flying to my gigs, and I'm a spoiled electronic musician. You know, I had a nice flight, a nice hotel, promoter took me to a nice restaurant. All this is history. Now I'm living the hard rock and roll life. So we're going to be on tour in Europe for 2 months, and then after a little bit of a break, we will tour the States, and I quit.